Hello one and all, I'm Chris, and I'm going to show you today how to make a Pixelmon server. For the first step, we're going to go through showing you how to port forward. A server needs the port forwarding to be able to access the internet. And the first step in this, you need to figure out what your IPv4 address is. To find your IPv4 address, the easiest way to do this is using command prompt. To use this, go to your Windows run bar in Windows 10. You should be able to get to this by hitting the Windows button on R at the same time. It should bring up a run box and you'll just be able to type in command prompt. Just like that. Hit enter and it should bring up a box much like this. This uses command line codes. For this, to get the actual IPv4 local address, you would type in ipconfig, just like that, ipconfig, then hit enter. I will cover up the local addresses that I have for my computer, just for privacy's sake, but under the IPv4 address, you would follow the dotted line. Your address should be right there. Write that down. Memorize it. Do whatever you need. You'll need this number for several things, so make sure to write it down. I would suggest. And before we move on, I will just make note to repeat this a few times. Your IPv4 local address and your outgoing address are two different things. Do not get them confused in this. But that will come up later. So the next step, once you have that written down, open your web browser and type in your local IPv4 address into it. And it should bring up your modem settings. Or your modem panel, I should say. If you do not have the login information for this, it should be somewhere on your router or modem. I would say just like look under the bottom of it and it should say the default for it. If you are younger and you have parents that don't really want you to use this, you either would have to ask permission, or if you really want to be sneaky, you can hit the reset button on it to reset all the information, then you could just use the default passwords. But I wouldn't recommend that if you already have different ones set. Either way, you would log into here. You'll be brought to a screen somewhat like this. Most of these modem router screens are all different, so this will vary depending on what brand you have, but it's somewhat the same. You would need to find some sort of advanced settings. Sometimes it's under things like security, but for mine, I would go to advanced. Go under forwarding. Again, I will block out any of my local addresses just for privacy's sake. For most of you, if you've not made a server before, you'll probably see nothing under these settings. You won't have anything already made. But since I already have a few different servers, I have a few different ports forwarded already. I already have a Minecraft server forwarded. You can see here. But I'll just go through the process again, just to make sure everyone knows how to do it. So for mine, I would go to create it. I would type in my local address, the same one that I got into here with. Local address that we used the ipconfig to get to. Now for the local start port, Minecraft uses the port 25565. You would want that as your start and end port. You do not need an external port. For the protocol, you want to use both. For the description, this is just the name so you remember what's what. I just use Minecraft usually, but for this I'll just type in Pixelmon. And you would want it on. Sometimes port forwarding things don't always have this enable feature. If it doesn't, it's usually just apply or enable them, something like that. For this, then I would just hit submit. Since I already have another one, though, it'll tell me that I already have two of the same thing going. But now you'll have the port forwarded. So that means that your server technically could go onto the internet, but you need to be able to turn on the server for one, and be able to connect to it. Now that you're done port forwarding, you actually need to create the server itself. Now, to do this, let's start by making a folder on our desktop that we'll easily be able to get to. Just right-click on the desktop, make a new folder, name it whatever you wish. I'll name this YouTube server for now. Now we have an empty folder that we can use for our server. Now we need to fill that file up with our server files. First, we need the old version of the Minecraft server that we're going to be using for this version of Pixelmon. That would be 1.10.2. Get the server jar, save it to your server folder. I'll just name it Minecraft server 1.10.2. Let that download. I'll include a link in the description for this website. Now you need the Forge server file. You want to download the recommended installer for this version. Usually that's what I would say. If you've already used Forge before, you can get the universal one. You have all the files you already need. You need the installer though, if you have not used Forge before. Save that at the same place. Now we need the actual Pixelmon mod. We're going to be using 5.0.3. You can just download it from the website. I'll also include a link in the description for this. It'll take a little bit longer, so we'll move along. Now you have these files in your folder currently. Pixelmon file still downloading right now. We will run first the Minecraft server file. This will make our EULA. You would edit the EULA file. It'll look something like this. Just change it to true. Save it. And make sure that you do edit this file. If you don't, you won't be able to use your server. This is just the terms and agreement, pretty much. Then you can run your Forge file. You're installing a server. Just find the folder that you're using for this. You're good to go. Now that you have the libraries created, you can go down to the universal file, run it. It'll now create a few other folders, like this mod one right here. It'll create a basic world, as well as your server notepad file that you'll need to edit. Show you going through the process. Just let it run through this as it creates all the files and such. It also created a basic world. You can keep that world or delete it if you want. Now that that stuff is created, you can just type in the command stop on the server. That'll turn it off for now. We don't need it until we're done making everything else. The Pixelmon mod file just got finished downloading, so I'll just drag that over here, drop it into the mods folder. Now that that's done, I need to edit my server file. Be labeled as this properties file, server. Go into it, looks something like this. This is where you can edit most of your Minecraft world settings. You can change the name, change the message of the day, things like that. You can go down here, change the message of the day. I'll just name it. Change the message to a YouTube server, just to show it working and everything. But this is the important part, server IP. You need this to equal your local server IP address. So, how we got to the port forwarding, what we figured out from the command prompts, how we got into the modem on our web browser, we need that address. We need the local IP for the address. So type that in. I'll just block it out with a black bar or whatever to keep my privacy intact. When you're done writing that, though, you save the file, and again, make sure to not confuse this address with your outgoing one. The outgoing one is used to connect to your server on the internet. This is used to connect the server to the internet. Don't get it confused. One is connecting to, one is connecting from. And I think I might have said that wrong, but just don't get them mixed up. IPv4 goes here, and it goes on the port forwarding. It does not go anywhere else, though. So IPv4 goes onto the server notepad file, and port forwarding. Just to say, for the final time, save that. Now, technically, your server is now running on the internet, as long as you did the port forwarding correctly and made sure that the IPv4 address is in here. Now, your server can now go online. Don't need this install file anymore, so you can just get rid of it. The universal file, though, you can run it. And it'll load up the mod that you just put in. That's the Pixelmon mod. There's also plugins you can add in, things like that to give special messages and such. The things compatible with the Pixelmon mod are on the website if you want to look at those. You can add those in at your own volition. Now your server will go through running the mod, setting everything up. But as that's running, loading the rest of the files if we need, I would then recommend using the Pixelmon launcher. You can find that on the Pixelmon website. First one, Pixelmon launcher. Download that, install it. You don't have to use it, but it just makes things a lot easier. At least to me. The launcher looks like this. It'll tell you to log in with your Minecraft account. You can do so. Then it'll ask you to make a profile. Make sure that you're making the profile with information that your server is using. Make sure that it's the same. For your personal mods, those can be different. So like for this profile I have here, I'm running 5.0.3, that's right, and it's the 1.10.2. So the version is correct, you just need the version stuff to be correct, and you should be good to go onto the server. But if your server was running like 5.0.2, you would want that to be the same. And for personal mods, you can make that whatever you want. I just have a map, better FPS, Optifine. When you're actually creating the profile, you just hit this plus button. It'll say this kind of stuff. You can add on official mods that the Pixelmon server and profiles are known compatible with, or you can put in your own personal ones that you downloaded off the net. Just make sure you select the right version of Pixelmon, select the right version of Forge, etc. When that's all good, you can just load into the game. You'll go through an authentication. Sometimes Forge usually takes a little while to load up. For this, I will just leave the Minecraft window windowed so I can show what's going on. So Pixelmon running your profile. You have a Forge launcher active. You can see your different mods that are on. But for here, we would go to multiplayer. It'll scan for games on your local network or what have you. You can turn off all the Pixelmon accredited servers. You don't need those in that list. As you can see, I don't have them. If you just go through the normal profile setup, you'll probably see a whole bunch of random ones. But to add your own server, you go to add server. You can name it whatever you want in here, just so you remember it. And for the server address, this is where we need our outgoing IPv4 address. Now the outgoing address is not the same as the local one. Make sure you do not get them confused, I say again. To find this, you can go to a website much like this. I'll include a link in the description for it. If you want to use it, you can usually just type in Google outgoing IPv4 address and it should come up. But if it doesn't, this site I've never had a problem with, always gives it right away. So for here, be right down here. First thing pretty much. You can just copy and paste this or write it down, whatever you need. If you're going to be giving it out, if you want other people to connect to it online, just make sure to write it down or whatever so you can actually give it to people. Now I'll just type that in there. I copy and pasted it. So that's Control C to copy, Control V to paste, if no one knows. So the number is written in. Hit done. My Minecraft server. Looking for it. Connected now. It says my YouTube server message. I'll leave this server up. Drag it over here. Go a tad slow since I have like several things going at the same time. But now when we hit join server, you'll see on the server itself that my player name will show up as I log in. Usually this will take a little bit, and as I said again, Pixelmon uses a decent amount of RAM, so you may notice slowness, and if your internet is bad in general, again, probably going to be slow. Pixelmon, they always show you to pick your starter and whatnot. Figure out. And now you can see my name just popped up on the server, and I am inside my YouTube server there now. And you can see that it's actually playing. It's running my personal mods. I do not have any extra mods on this server. Since my server folder has all this, it has loaded in animals as well. So you see that it has the basic Minecraft animals in here. You can turn that off if you just want the Pokemon only though, in the server properties file. Disconnect from there. Show my name disappear on the server. When no one's on your server, or if you just want to turn off, make sure that you type in the command stop. Also, you don't want to just exit out of it or just log off your computer or turn it off when this is still running. It can make errors. and it can mess up your map. So make sure that you always save your server, and to do that, you just type in stop and enter. And I'll go through the process of shutting it off. Now, to make a server with more RAM, what you need to do is create a new file, and I would say just make a notepad file. Is the easiest way to do it. Just blank notepad file. As an example, I will just take the one from my already made server. Looks like this. So now I have all this information written out. It will be using this version of Forge that I have in the folder here. Make sure that the file name is exactly the same. As you can see, that all matches up fine. Write pause at the end, as well as no GUI to make sure that it doesn't have that. Well, you don't have to do the no GUI, but I'd recommend it. Just use the little RAM. And pause is so if something happens, it tells you that the error is there so you can look through, and it doesn't just shut off automatically. Now these parts are saying how much RAM it's going to use. 7 gigs here, 7 gigs here. So 7G is 7 gigabytes. So my server with this file would be using 7 gigabytes of RAM. I would recommend leaving these two numbers the same. You don't have to. This one should be what's the least amount of RAM it's using, and this what's the most. But I would just recommend leaving it the same so the server doesn't have any weird like lag lapses in it. So if you wanted to, you just change this to 4, this to 4, and you'd be having 4 gigabytes of RAM. The normal Minecraft amount of RAM for a server is usually 1 gigabyte or 2 gigabytes. So just having it up a little more can help. You don't need as much as me. Make sure that you know how much RAM your computer has. For Windows 7, you can just go to computer properties to look that up. Like right here, it shows that I have 20 gigabytes of RAM. So I would be able to go between that, and if you're running the server and playing Minecraft on the same computer, definitely make sure you know how much RAM you're using, because if you're using more RAM on your Minecraft's profile for Pixelmon and you're using more on your server, it could cause your computer to crash or blue screen if you're using way too much RAM. But yeah, once this is done, once you have all this information typed in, how much RAM you want to use, I will also include in the description this exact file line so you know, right? You'd save this as, though, the save file type, you want to go to all files. You can just name this what you, something that you'll remember it with. I'll just name it Pixelmon Server Launcher. And you want the file extension to be .bat. So just period, BAT, and you'll save it. Now you can get rid of this new text document, and you'll see the file that you saved right here. Now you'll open this. It'll look like a command prompt window. It'll go through loading the file just as normal. It'll just be starting with the more RAM. You'll see all the information load up. Now when you have Minecraft loaded up again, just go to multiplayer, and you should see the same server that you added already is still online, as long as all of this loaded in correctly. And you can join the server again. Your name will appear up in the command prompt window when it loads. Since Forge is a little different, your name should be highlighted in it. You can see it just popped up. Load my character in. But yeah, now I'm loaded in with my server with a little more RAM. As well as all my personal mods, etc. And when I disconnect from it, you'll see just that I left also with the highlighted text. And that is how you make a Pixelmon server, as well as add more RAM to the server if you wish. Hope this was informative. If anyone has any questions or problems, I'll try my best to answer. I can't solve all the problems, but a lot of them can just be little things. I would say if you're doing this yourself and you notice a few problems, just make sure local IPv4 address and outgoing, 2 different numbers. Remember that you're using the local IPv4 address on the server properties file. And you're using the outgoing only. You're only using the outgoing to get into the Minecraft server. So that's only for when you're doing multiplayer and adding the server. And with that, should be all you need. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope it was informative. Thanks for watching.